This video is part of a series. To better understand it, I highly recommend watching the series in order. I hope you enjoy it. Please remember to like, subscribe, and share. Thank you. What exactly is the St. Gallen Mafia? Well, from around 1995, a group of cardinals began to meet in St. Gallen, Switzerland for what they called church reform. It was headed by Cardinal Maria Martini, who outright called himself the anti-pope and a precursor and preparer for the Holy Father. According to Crisis magazine, quote, Martini was the leading antagonist to Popes John Paul II and Benedict, a Jesuit famous for groaning that the Church was 200 years behind. In night conversations with Cardinal Martini, he cringed at the major damage caused by Humanae Vitae. The Church spoke too much about the Sixth Commandment and sin. He said legal abortion was, ultimately, positive. End quote. Cardinal Danels, one of the members of the group, admitted before his death in an autobiography that the St. Gallen group, or Mafia as they called themselves, one of their main goals was to place a pope on the chair of St. Peter who was aligned with their beliefs. From an article in the Remnant newspaper, the author eloquently describes the aim of the group, quote, early on, the St. Gallen group identified their prime papal contender as Jorge Bergoglio of Argentina, confident that he would radically transform and modernize the Catholic Church in their image and likeness. They kept their scheme and racket carefully under wraps. They nearly won the turf war in 2005 when John Paul II died. The St. Gallen group scrambled for their opportunity to install their man, yet fell short. Their papal politicking tallied a second-place papal ballot finish for Bergoglio, but ultimately he lost out to the conservative Cardinal Ratzinger. Frustration was building. They were running out of precious time as the St. Gallen group aged, and more importantly, Jorge Bergoglio was rapidly growing too old for papabill. The dream of modernizing the church was slipping through their ecclesial fingers. Worst of all, a relatively healthy Benedict occupied the chair of Peter as an impenetrable impediment to their plans. Apart from the devil, there is no more unforgiving enemy than random Father Time. The clock was ticking. Without divine intervention, Benedict appeared firmly ensconced in the seat of Peter. The St. Gallen prelates couldn't wait another 3 or 4 years for his earthly demise. Besides, Cardinal Bergoglio was already 76, and soon he would be too old to be elected Pope. Lightning struck when Pope Benedict, the man who stood in the way of Bergoglio's papal fortunes, abdicated the throne of Peter. With a crack of thunder out of the dark blue sky, the long-awaited plans of St. Gallen would unfold behind a conclave curtain. The article continues. Danels and his St. Gallen co-conspirators quickly and skillfully engineered the election of their designated Pope-in-waiting, the Cardinal of Buenos Aires. Bergoglio was elected Pope by the College of Cardinals, and the rest is, well, heresy. Having successfully engineered their papal takeover, Cardinal Danels couldn't contain his bravado. The pompous prelate needed public credit for his masterful plot. At the release of his biography, the Belgian cardinal broke the cardinal rule of omerta, the strict code of silence, by proudly bragging that the St. Gallen group anointed Bergoglio. End quote. In his book Infiltration, author Dr. Taylor Marshall stated that, quote, the biographers of Cardinal Danels explained that the election of Bergoglio was prepared in St. Gallen because the election of Bergoglio corresponded with the aims of St. Gallen. On that there is no doubt. He continues. Why St. Gallen, Switzerland? St. Gallen has historical roots in European communism. In the beginning of the 1900s, the region became associated with ritual Satanism and communism. Vladimir Lenin, before he overthrew Russia in November of 1917, hid out in St. Gallen. Also, the infamous Aleister Crowley and his adherents also possessed a ritualistic connection to St. Gallen. He was derided as the wickedest man in the world and labeled a Satanist. His religion was the Order of the Templars of the Orient, or OTO. OTO was European Freemasonry, but under the leadership of Crowley, OTO was reorganized around the Law of Dilemma. It is a phallic cult with its oldest lodge in Switzerland. After the death of Cardinal Martini, Italian Masonic Lodge claimed that he was one of their own. The Grand Orient d'Italia openly mourned his death and admitted that he was an avid member of the lodge. It is also known that Cardinal Theodore McCarrick, who was a member of the St. Gallen Mafia, and who recently stepped down as cardinal because of various sex scandals, including running a sex ring out of his New Jersey beach house. This was the same McCarrick that Pope Benedict enlisted Archbishop Vigano to gather information on. According to the FatimaCenter.com, quote, McCarrick's role goes a little deeper than previously suspected based on reports that he had been operating as a communist plant in the heart of the church as far back as 1950. McCarrick apparently had close ties with St. Gallen, Switzerland, the locale of a communist training center that recruited corrupt young men, especially homosexuals, to enter Catholic seminaries and begin eroding the church from within. According to James Green, the alleged longtime abuse victim of McCarrick, the ex-cardinal went to St. Gallen in 1951 to visit friends of Green's grandfather, a venture that would significantly shape and solidify McCarrick's career, as he himself would relate to the New York Times in 2001. McCarrick's visit to St. Gallen seemingly was connected with this communist training center that had been set up by the Soviets for the subversion of the Catholic Church. End quote. In an interview on September 29, 1978, Mary Lowley, one of the Garabandal seers, said that the messages of Garabandal were, quote, all related to communism and what is going to happen in the church and to the people, because all these things are going to have repercussions amongst the people. When the church suffers confusion, the people are going to suffer too. Some priests who are communists will create such confusion that people will not know right from wrong. End quote. It is clear that Our Lady's message to the seers of Garabandal is a dire warning that must not be taken lightly. She says, quote, my message has not been complied with and has not been made known. I am advising you that this is the last one. Before the cup was filling up, now it is overflowing. Many cardinals, many bishops, and many priests are on the road to perdition and taking many souls with them. Less and less importance is being given to the Eucharist. You should turn the wrath of God away from yourself by your efforts. If you ask Him for forgiveness with a sincere heart, He will pardon you. I, your mother, through the intercession of Saint Michael the Archangel, ask you to amend your lives. You are now receiving the last warnings. I love you very much and do not want your condemnation. Pray to us with sincerity and we will grant your request. You should make more sacrifices. Think about the passion of Jesus. End quote.